Hey, this is your boy D in the closet. I'm the DM in the closet. D in the closet. It's been a while. Things are getting crazy up in here. I'm trying to figure out the setup better. There's a lot of rumbling noises in my house, and hopefully it's not going to come through the. I'm trying to like isolate my microphone as much as possible, but there's like HVAC is all constantly going and all this stuff. Yeah, but I love my house, so it's a trade-off. So hopefully this isn't too unbearable to listen to. Today I'm drinking a mead from Graudenfeld Meadery up in St. Albans, Vermont. They are a fantastic company, certified B Corp, woman-owned. Got a lot of stuff going on, and they make fantastic mead. They primarily make craft mead, which is like a bubbly kind of mead, like a beer. But this is actually one of their honey wines, and you're like, wow, you have that on ice. What's your problem? And I'm like, I got lots of problems, but this ain't one. It's actually very good on ice. This is their, I'm gonna mess this up, Bragi, Bragi mead, and it's a black currant mead with juniper rose hips, and then a little bit of Tina's. Oh no! Oh come on! What else is in it? Oh dang it! Oh no! There's some other stuff in it. It was good. It's like spicy, and sweet, and ice cold. People are probably screaming at me right now. What are you doing? I don't know. What am I doing? Well, what I'm doing today is talking about villains. Sometimes it's hard to run villains right because people don't put in the work ahead of time in order to get a villain that's actually villainous and makes sense. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? There's often a haphazard approach to the BBEG or the B-Beg, beg, the big bad evil guy. There's also always a little bit of slapdashery. Is that the term? Slapping things on real quickly and trying to make it look like you spent some time on it. Sometimes it's hard. Motivations. What's motivating this guy? Why is he attacking the PC? Well, you got to do some work up front, and you can do it very easily. So the first thing I like to do is think about their alignment. Yes, there's many things about alignment that people don't like. It puts me in a box. Yeah, well, yeah, no. I'd put the lick in the box. I don't even know the words to that. Just something like that. But the alignment really helps you understand where the person is coming from, just in a very broad sense. And look, the villain doesn't always have to be evil or neutral. You could have a good villain. They're just at odds with what the PCs are doing. So you could have like a group of paladins who are at odds with the PCs are doing, because the PCs are maybe on a more chaotic mission than a lawful one. And they have to break the law to do their mission, and the paladins become the enemy, or they become the villain in the story. There's also, when we come to neutral things, these are a little easier just because it's like they're kind of one track mind. There's like, this is what I want. I don't really care what happens in the consequence of me doing what I want. And these sometimes can be, neutral. Neutral is like, it's almost like chaotic, because in the chaotic in a way that you don't know what's going to go on with them. Like, you just expect them to weigh their weigh their goals and what they want at every decision. And just imagine someone playing a big game of, just utilizing game theory completely. So we can have those, and it's important to know, is this person a neutral being who doesn't really care about what they're gonna do in regards to the law, or they're not going to always be chaotic. They'll just do what's in their best interest. And then you come to the evil, which are the most typical villains. If you can imagine that. And these, they're, you think of the classic chaotic demon, lawful evil, devil, neutral evil, and you're just like, whatever, I'm evil. I follow some laws and I break others. So finding the alignment of your villain, whoever's opposing the PCs, that's a first step. And then you decide, you kind of have to decide your story. It's like, what are they doing that the PCs must now oppose? And when you consider that, you consider the type of campaign that people want to run. Do they want it on the rails? Do they want an open world? Do they want to be able to visit a bunch of places? Do they want to stay in one city? Or how many races are involved? Are they all playing dwarves? Then maybe you should take that into consideration. Is this a campaign where magic is rare? Then that can factor into the main plot or something like that. So you figure out, once you've kind of got an idea of what your villain is, then you can put him or her into the story, or it into the story. And when you start to come up with how this villain is working, and we kind of touched on this briefly, you have to think about a big picture. Level 20, like if you're doing a grand campaign that brings them from level 1 to level 20, you go like, how is this going to end? What is going to be the way that the PCs win the campaign or end the campaign? I won D&D, guys. I just won it. So how is the campaign resolved, and what does it look like all the way onto that road? And what you're going to find is that you're going to need more than one villain. You have the B-Bag, you have the BBEG, and he'll be at the top, but then there has to be tiers, and like the junior bosses, and those fights going up, and it's always a scaling of power to be appropriate with your PC's level. But I always like having the main villain, unless it's just a total random side quest, everything they do to beat like these underbosses, it needs to be building up to that final fight, basically. There should be plot links between all of these junior boss and big boss fights, and when you do that, the characters or the players can feel like they understand what's going on, because there's like a rhyme and reason to everything that's happening, and that also allows them to strategize better and make decisions that are more informed. When everything is just random and you don't give them the information to see that things are related and stuff, and you're just like throwing, okay, and there's this fight and this fight, they might overthink something and they make connections that aren't there. They might do something that will then hurt them in the long run. If they had known the connection or had an idea that there was a connection before, they wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. But sometimes you want to surprise them. But you don't surprise them all the time, because then that just gets annoying. So the villains, they can be any alignment. They can have a myriad of goals, if you would, and it's always the best question to ask yourself is, what would I do if I was the character in the given circumstance? If you're playing the villain and you're like, I want X, I want mead with ice, and then they throw you out the tavern for such sacrilege. So you say to yourself, I want X, and what would I do as this character to get X? And then you have to put the PCs in a way to oppose X, the getting of X. And when you do that, eventually the two butt heads, and then you have your villain. or antagonist. Antagonist is a little more appropriate because it's just because your villain could have completely like honest aims, or no less noble than the PCs. Like if you're opposing a country in war and your big villain is the king of the other country, that king isn't necessarily evil. He's just opposing the war. So you're just at heads, and so he's the antagonist rather than the villain. But villains is a more fun word than antagonist. Funner, more fun, funner, funner. So when we ask ourselves what would the villain do, and we kind of come up with the answer based on alignment and the different circumstances surrounding the world, then we have to be consistent. We got to stick to the motive, stick to the script. You're going to have to react just as much as the PCs are going to have to react, because it's D&D, folks. They can throw anything at you. They could do anything, really. And then you have to be able to think in terms of what PCs have given you. You can't just wish something went one way and then just kind of force it in. You have to roll with the punches. So if the villain, he was going to steal some artifact, and you expect the PCs to stop him, and then he would have to go do something. But what if your villain actually gets the artifact and the PCs fail? Then you have to go down that route. You have to think about what are the consequences of the PCs succeeding and failing. A lot of DMs just think about when the PCs succeed because they expect them to. And people play like that, or it's like they'll give the PCs every advantage so they don't fail. I don't do that. I think it's more fun to see a failure play out and then have to deal with the consequences. The plot always moves forward, but how it moves forward is up to you, and you should make the decisions based on what the antagonists of the PCs want. You should basically plot the whole campaign in the point of view of the antagonist. If you just are throwing together haphazard quests and whatnot, that's fine if that's the kind of thing you're doing, but it's not going to make much sense until you try to like haphazardly stitch everything up together and like, look, here's a plot, and your player's like, no, there's no plot. There's no plot, buddy boy. So your villain's really the glue of your campaign. And the villains, people that I don't like playing against the players, but you kind of are. You, the GM, are the villain. You are the antagonist. You're the one running the opposition, and that doesn't mean that you're always trying to screw your players over. It just means that you have to play a little, defense or offense, opposing their defense or offense. And you also, but at the same time, you can't wish, if the dice roll what they do, don't force catastrophe on your players. There's people do all the videos on, dice fudging, blah 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 blah. If you're gonna fudge in the PC's flavor. Do not fudge against their. That's just a bad move. That's not a cool move, dude. It's not a cool move. Yeah, if you're gonna fudge it so the PC doesn't die. But if you're gonna fudge to kill the PC, you got a problem, buddy. You've got a major problem. It's your socks. The problem with your socks. You're probably wearing crappy socks. So villains, they are kind of the glue of the campaign. They're the raison d'etre of your PC's actions. They kind of are running the show. They are you, basically. They dictate what's next. It's very rare that the PCs get in a position where they can dictate what's next. I guess it can be very proactive. But when it comes to most big quests, it's like the PCs are trying to stop the blah 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 in time. It's very rarely a quest is the PCs are trying to do something and other people are trying to stop them. That's interesting. Like the PCs are trying to build a big old ship and sail across the water to explore, and there are people just sabotaging them every turn. That's kind of a weird way to run a game where you don't necessarily have villains, you just have people opposing the PCs and against their quest. And usually what we do is we play the PCs trying to stop some calamity or, stop someone else. It's an interesting idea to have it the other way around, with the PCs are the ones who are trying to be stopped. And I don't know if that would be fun. It could be fun. I don't think it would be fun. Oh, you trying to do that? Oh, well, here comes a horde of whatever, and they're trying to stop you. And, oh, you're trying to do that? Here comes someone else, and they're trying to stop you. That just becomes like a bad uh, game online. One of those freebies where it's like you defend the wall or something, and you're defending the wall with stuff, and then they try to get you to pay for something. Isn't that great? Well, guys, that was little thoughts on villains. Little thoughts on little thoughts on villains. I was gonna do an NPC video, but then I was like, I'll just break it down by category. So we got our villains. We'll talk about maybe some heroes or friends of the PCs and how we run those in a game. So hopefully this gave you something to think about. Check out Mead. Gronfell Meadery. Pretty good stuff. See you later.